Lisa, I guess you can go next.
Hi, my name is Lisa Dance, and I am a user experience designer.
Scott?
Hey, I'm Scott. I am a senior manager of product design.
All right, and Shannon?
Hey everyone, I'm Shannon Leahy. I started my career as a content designer, and I'm now an experience design team lead.
Okay, and Carl?
Yeah, I'm a product designer.
Yeah. Thank you all very much for joining us. We greatly appreciate you all being here and sharing your expertise with our faculty and students. Okay.
For our participants that just came in, just so you know, we are recording and it's for future reference for the Career Services tab. So just want you to be aware of that we are recording. So we'll get started with the first question. What is UX design? And what does it mean to you?
So I would say that UX design is this. I said to someone one time, it's, you know, that website or that app or that experience that just does not work the way you are thinking it should. Like their UX design, we are supposed to be able to create experiences that do work as users are expected it and to meet their needs with it. To me, user experience design is, well, I get into the field, and what I love about it is that it helps take away the frustration you feel when you're trying to do something that should be really simple and obvious, and it isn't. And so that's what's always driving me, is to just make experiences better. You know, everybody's been on that app and you get an error message that you have no idea what it means, and you're stuck there and you still need to do what you need to do. So user experience design, that's not supposed to happen. If there's an error, we're supposed to be communicating what it is and how you can resolve it. So that's my description.
Yeah, I love Lisa's description of, like, think about that thing that's frustrating. Like I use that example all of the time. I would also think I also kind of think it's, to kind of hook into that a little bit, I see it as using empathy to find the intersection of business value and human need. Because I think if you start to slant too heavily one way or the other, you know, if you're focused too much on business value, you're not making good decisions or decisions that make sense for your customers. And I think sometimes if you kind of start to lean too far to that human need side of it, you might not have something that's sustainable. I mean, like this, you know, all of these things take time, money, and effort. So, you know, unless you're willing to do something for free for an indeterminate amount of time, like you do have to figure out that way to at least ethically monetize what you are working on.
It's definitely a marriage of the two.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, would anyone else like to add any more to that? Or?
Yeah, I think, you know, Scott had mentioned, you know, finding that empathy. And I think part of UX design really is, and, you know, research in particular as kind of a part of UX design is really understanding the customers and why their behaviors and why they make the decisions or they interact with a product the way they do. Because if you have more understanding of their world and why they make those decisions, then you can then work with the teams that are actually building the product to make an experience that is going to be more intuitive for them. And hopefully they're going to have a better experience with your product and become more of a customer advocate for you,
Okay.
for your company.
All right. All right. Who does UX design impact and who is it for?
I think very much like what Lisa and Scott had mentioned, it's to impact the business needs or a service, but user is in is in the term user experience. So it's to definitely impact users, whether it's a physical product or a digital product. And Charles and Ray Eames talk about it. Its design is to anticipate the needs of a guest if the designer was a host, and it's supposed to benefit them in order for them to use the product even more, or in order to achieve the goals or the job that they need done.
All right.
Yeah.
And it impacts everyone. I mean, we're
Hmm.
users of everything from this technology that we're on now to any kind of product that you're using and things like that. And I think one thing that's important when we think about users is that everybody's different. It's a very diverse world. And so you do have to understand your particular users in the context of their lives. Because if you're designing for, like I think of now with the pandemic and you're thinking about people's, some people are able to work at home, some people still have to go into a physical place. And people's contexts of in their lives are very different. So if you're going to be designing a product or something, you have to think about some people work at a job where they aren't able to get on a computer or a technology and do something that they only have a short window of time for. Other people are on there all the time. So you do have to really think about it, or you're missing the mark.
Yeah, I would agree with Lisa. I mean, I think it's an everyone thing, and it just depends on kind of the scale and the way that you're focusing on it. I mean, UX could make it easier and simpler for me to check my email, which is, hey, that's great for me. But UX and decisions that are made in systems can also make it easier to share disinformation. So there are potentially very serious impacts for design decisions that were made or design decisions that were ignored.
Something else that I find that happens when you're working within user experience or product design too is, doing research or tapping into your empathy to understand other people. It also goes a long way with collaboration and teamwork. And so user experience, it's not just designers that impact. It's also going to be product managers, are going to be folks who are working on the technology and the coding to bring something to life. It's going to be people such as like if you have to work with like a compliance department, you've got to think about your business policies and the decisions you're making there too. So there's a lot of different players, if you will, that kind of have an impact. So you got to think about that lens of, just like in design, there's so many different disciplines. When you're solving problems in an organization or an agency, there are other points of view there too. So you've got to use your superpowers to help collaborate with those other folks, and to, like other folks were saying, kind of find that balance of what's good for the place where I work, but also what's going to be the best thing for the people that we're trying to help out with our product or with our service.
Yeah, I think Shannon brings up a good point. Like, legal can have an equal amount of impact on the user experience as someone with designer in their title.
Which leads a little bit into the next question. You mentioned, I can't remember which one you said, but you said designers have to anticipate needs, right? So when you're talking about anticipating needs, how is that done? Like, with whom do you have to work or interact, or, the company, the people, to kind of figure those things out?
Yeah, it's a good question. Just understanding the last question, like who it impacts, it's really open. And where we need to understand the answer to this question is anticipating the needs of a system or an economy or a business or an individual. It requires asking a lot of questions. It requires thinking about like what can happen next, or even past that point. So we're not just problem solving, we're searching for problems that could come down farther down the line.
Okay. So when I think about our students and some of the majors that they're, pursuing, heard a lot about research, what kind of majors would you anticipate or do you see would fit well with, it seems like a variety, but I just want to be clear, like what are for students that are considering this field, what are the best areas of study for them to consider?
Do we maybe, it might be really interesting. Do we want to go around the panel and ask everyone what their major was? Because I think we're going to hear some really unexpected answers.
Sure.
I'll start. I was an art school kid, so maybe kind of the most obvious entry to a design field.
I was a business background, so I focused first in actually economics, and then later on in marketing.
I'll jump in. I actually majored in English and I minored in fashion merchandising.
So I was a political science major and I was supposed to be a lawyer. I went to my first week of law school, decided I do not want to do that. I have not regretted it, but it left you with an opening of what to do next. I did went back to school for a marketing certificate, but eventually found myself my way to UX.
Yeah, I wanted to be an architect, but then I got into advertising, and advertising was a copywriter, and that led me into making things, and UX was all about making things.
Interesting.
That's quite a variety, because I know when we were first introduced to this, the first thing that came to my mind was art, right? Graphic design, interior design. But then after talking with Katie and Lisa, it was like, oh my gosh, like we need to introduce our people to all this information. Okay, thank you. I got off a little bit, Robin, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Their thoughts made me think of other questions, so.
Okay. So
Rhonda,
Yeah.
I just wanted to just one other thing I wanted to mention. I think that you and I have talked and Robin about like all the different majors and really when you talk to different people in design, there's so many different backgrounds. I think the big thing is really having a desire and interest to focus on problem solving and thinking about from a customer lens and really like how do we solve current and future problems, having that kind of excitement around that aspect. That's something that is key in this field.
Yeah, I would also, to hook into that, say, I mean, I think psychology is probably a really important point of view, just because so much of what we do is trying to understand like how people think, how they perceive the world, and what motivates them.
Okay, all right. So what are the most important skills you leverage in your work?
Asking questions. I think Carl, earlier you were mentioning this, and it's come up a couple different times with other folks, but a lot of our job almost, I feel like I'm a professional question asker because I'm asking questions to understand what is someone's motivation, right? What are their needs? What are their fears? Having come from a content design background, it also starts getting into what are their mental models? How do people talk about things in real life? If they're trying to describe a task like filling out a college application or trying to do something like financial aid, like you get thrown around a lot of like terminology and jargon gets thrown around, and then it's like, well, what does that actually mean? How do people actually talk about this? It has to do with understanding their emotions and their context too. We were talking earlier, I think Lisa, you brought up some people might be working from home, or they might have a family member that they're helping take care of. And so all of those other facets of someone's life, those things don't turn off when they use a website or use an app or do something. They're bringing that with them. As far as asking questions at work too, it's all about asking, well, why do we want to do this? And what are we going to gain from this? And oh, if we're going to make people fill out this form that's got these pieces of data, well, why are we asking that? How are we going to use that data in the future? How will we make sure it stays safe? So asking lots and lots of questions for sure.
And
Go ahead.
I was just going to piggyback on to that part of the asking questions. A lot of times you'll get requests to say, oh, we need to put this on the website, or we need an app. And you have to dig into, well, really, why? And then the answer, what you eventually get to may not be putting something on the web or an app. It might be something else, because you got to dig down to really what the reason is for it. So yeah, definitely questions.
Yeah. I would say teamwork. I mean, like, all of these products and services that we create are just so complex and getting more complicated every day. It is impossible, or almost impossible, to do anything by yourself. Like, you've really got to be able to work with people well.
Yeah. I would add having a sense of economics, or business. And it may not be a business that you're impacting, but if it's a nonprofit or a cause or anything like that, there has to be some value added in order for people to actually benefit from it, or for it to actually be feasible or even scalable, or for people just even want to use it. So even marketing is one good skill you can have.
I would say yes, and to the marketing and communication / presentation skills. So as Shannon had mentioned, you're asking a lot of questions. You're gathering data. You're trying to better understand either your customer or the business, and why they're asking you to work on a particular project to deliver an app or make changes to the website. And a lot of times you're finding things out about the customer that is going to shift what might happen. And people fall in love with their ideas of what to do. And sometimes you have to, it's part of your job to kind of show them, well, this, to really make sure that we're going after our customers' needs, we actually need to rethink some of this. And so being able to, tell that story of your customer and be able to effectively communicate that and kind of persuade, make changes, I think is something that is key in this field, especially when, like I said, you're working with people that they feel like they know this is the best thing. They're excited, they're ready to go, and you're here to say, well, we might need to rethink some of these things. But if you're able to, tell that story in a compelling way, people get excited with you and want to make those changes.
And
Yeah.
one of the ways,
Oh, go ahead.
I was say one of the ways that's helpful is that, we're always talking to users and we're doing testing, and then like we have highlight reels of, what users or customers are saying. And so a lot of times that's helpful in communicating. Like sometimes we might not necessarily want to hear you say it, but when the customer says it, it encourages them more to take the action that you may be recommending. So yeah, so it's no user experience if you're not actually talking to users.
So that makes us tweak our next question just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
To ask, if you can share, what has been the most exciting project you ever worked on, or maybe the most challenging project you've ever worked on? If you can share that.
I can maybe jump in first. So I worked at Capital One several years ago, and we worked on a project there that was basically making their entire public-facing website mobile responsive. So it was one single code base that it would work on desktop, and if you pulled it up on a mobile phone, the code would scale down so you got a really mobile-friendly experience. And that was a really exciting project. We really had no 2.2 when we kicked it off, because there were no large kind of Fortune 200, even 500 realm companies that we could point to and say like, hey, they're doing this too, and we should think about it. So it was really fun and kind of challenging to navigate kind of the naysayers and just really building that buy-in for this is something that's valuable for us to spend our time on, and this is something that would ultimately be meaningful for our customers. And the way, figuring out how to navigate that, figuring out how to sell it to senior leadership. And then, ultimately, I think it was like really rewarding in finding like that final nugget that was really kind of the main selling point of like, yes, this is something we should do. And we ultimately found that in data, which was really exciting. And what we saw was, before we started the project, we had like an m.capitalone.com site. So it was like a mobile specific site, a very stripped down version of the site that didn't have everything that the full site had. But there was a little link at the bottom of the m.site that said view full site. And it would take you to like this really weird, like pinch and zoom and pan and scale kind of experience that was absolutely atrocious to do on a mobile phone. But what we saw was 96% of the people that got to that m.site clicked the view full site button because they were willing to suffer through the bad experience to get all of the content. And that was ultimately kind of one of the really big selling points for people to realize, like, a stripped down mobile experience is no longer acceptable. Like, we need to offer the full experience to people on both mobile and desktop sites.
Yeah, I think, just kind of one high level experience I can share is in research, one of the things that you sometimes do is develop personas. And so it's personas are basically at a high level fictional kind of people or that kind of represent your users. And so companies will have multiple personas depending on how large the company is. And when I first started working in research, I got the opportunity for the company I was working with to develop personas. And this project involved me talking for 2 weeks on a daily basis with almost 24 people that kind of, encapsulated like different aspects of our users, and being able to be a part of their lives for 2 weeks and really get to kind of know them. I used different tools that allowed me to chat with them when they could chat, and they would send videos in on once every 2 weeks. It would be one video a day. And I was able to use that information to help our company better understand who we were working towards, or like who are we working for, and really provide some of those interesting pieces of information that you don't really get to know unless you actually spend a lot of time with a person. You ask those 5 whys, kind of, you think of a kid asking why to finally get to the root cause. And I was able to actually spend that time and do that and really get some just meaningful information. It was just an amazing experience for me to get to know, and then to be able then to share that knowledge and information with our full company. That was just an exciting opportunity for me.
Okay. Could you share with us one thing that students at Reynolds right now can do to learn more about UX design?
Yeah, I think you can just, there's so much information out there right now about a lot of things, but especially design in any category, and then user experience as well. So just pick up, a friend, like any one of us are willing to partner or mentor and point you to some great resources. Read a lot, listen to podcasts. There's even TV shows on Netflix about this stuff, and just be very curious about what this field can offer you, and be curious about how you can change it too.
what about even if they wanted to get into the field, you know, so preparing as a student, but like, where do I go to Capital One? Like, you know, where do I even begin if I want to? What do these jobs look like, the titles and that type of thing?
Well,
Yeah,
we
I think-
provided a resource list that has some of the things that you can look into sort of get an introduction to it. There's also a survey, the UX Census RVA survey that is a survey of the UX community here in Richmond. So it tells you about job titles, skill sets, education, salaries, things like that. But UX is definitely a field that you do have to have some experience. So one, you're going to need some training on the UX, on sort of UX methodology. So that research part, learning how to wireframe and prototype, because always when you get an idea, you need to, one of the things about experience is you want to sort of iterate that idea. So you want to do a wireframe or a prototype so you can actually present it to your stakeholders, but also present it to users and get them to test it out and tell you how it works. And then you make changes and things like that. So you definitely would need the skills for the research. You'll need the skills for the wireframe and prototyping with it. But definitely there's different ways of research and testing and things like that with it. So definitely there are online courses that you can take for it. There are some undergraduate programs and user experience with it as well. There are some boot camps, but that's, you know, that's the expense that not necessarily you can get a job afterwards with it. But the biggest piece of once you get those skills is that you have to do some actual projects and have a portfolio so you can show potential employers which you can do. That's sort of an overview.
Yeah.
What else did I miss? Because I'm sure it's many other pieces to it, right?
I would recommend, we're part of the, Richmond Design Group. Richmond has a very, I've just found very welcoming design community. So finding out like the different user experience communities within Richmond and just signing up for upcoming events. But as well, informational interviews, I feel like are probably one of the best ways of like what's next, making a list of additional questions that they might have about the UX field and design, and reaching out to people in Richmond, any of us or even others, via like LinkedIn, for example, to just say if you've got 15 minutes or so, just to connect, to begin that kind of your own discovery process of UX design. I've personally found informational interviews to be really helpful.
Right, so you all are members of the Richmond Design Group. So can you all talk about the purpose of the group and what are some events that you all have coming up or that you host?
Yeah. The general mission of the group is to make design and technology accessible to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually a culmination of 3 different groups. So Richmond User Experience Group, Richmond Content Strategy or RVA Content Strategy, and then Ladies That UX. And we recognize that there's a great diversity in each of those organizations. And when we come together, we work really well, and our reach is more broad than it was individually. So yeah, we've been coming up with events, and the programming over the last several months has shifted quite a bit, especially because of the pandemic and the way we work. And right now we're recognizing that we need to reach out to groups and individuals or communities that wouldn't otherwise have this opportunity to know what we do or how it can help them or how feasible of a career it is for them. So the last 2 months we had navigating design careers, and we reached out, to other countries, let alone other cities, but also Richmond and other schools and universities. And the series is meant to be reaching out to those people, let them know that they can do this job too. And one other event we have coming up next month, November 20th, is a roundtable event, and you get to meet professionals in user experience. So content strategists, researchers, designers, just to know what they do and network with them.
Yeah, and I think to hook into what,
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna say, to hook into what Carl said, I think, there's a really great design community here in Richmond. Not that it's this exclusive thing, but it can sometimes just, if you don't know people or something like that, it can be maybe not as quite as apparent to people. And just making sure like we're trying to make as many connections and open as many doors to as many people as possible.
Okay. All righty. Well, I guess we will open this up for any questions that anyone might have that you all would like to ask the panelists.
Feel free to unmute yourself and go for it.
I'll go. Hi, I'm Kristen Hott. I work here at Reynolds, and I work with high school students actually from the Richmond, from 8 different Richmond high schools who are earning their associate's degree while they're in high school. And perhaps it's because of their age. I've seen more people. I had to ask a student who was interested, do you know what UX stands for? And he was like, oh yeah, no, I know. So today was actually the first day that I learned it was user experience. Thank you. That's, I think, how little the lay people really understand, if you're not a coder and you're not in design. And I really just hope to, like, I think I heard Scott saying, and all of you, that, like psychology and just the words empathy and the words problem solving. And I always talk to students about thinking about how they want to solve problems in the world. I'm a career coach working with them. And so this seems, I think, sometimes people might think, oh, well, if I don't want to be a computer programmer or something, this isn't for me. And so I get the feeling that you all are saying that's not necessarily who this is for. And so I'm just encouraged to see that I have a friend who works in, she's a design strategist, and I guess that's one of those titles. And so, but like years ago, it didn't even exist. And of course, we're looking ahead at jobs that don't exist now. And so I think my thinking is that this type of field is one of those that just will continue to branch out, and that they may find themselves needing this kind of knowledge and skill base. And so I'm really excited about it, the future of work, all of that kind of stuff. So I might be getting in touch with you all again to join somebody, like these 79 high schoolers who are exceptional and just don't know what they don't know. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, please reach out.
Yeah, and to be honest, I would say 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, if someone asked me or told me I was going to be a design researcher, I would have been like, huh? Like what's a design researcher? And so I think about that a lot. And you mentioned coders, people that are into technology. That's definitely a space that we see people in the design field come from too as well, because designers work, some designers work very closely with their tech partners. And ultimately, some companies, like when they're building their actual products, like they use different design systems to actually build that. So that's a function within design, but you have to have some type of coding knowledge with that. And so there's there's definitely that space as well for people who are very interested in technology, but as well design. We see people in technology go to design. We see designers go into technology. So that space is there.
But you definitely do not have to be a coder, because I have taken the classes. I don't like it and I don't do it. So you definitely, there's space for you if you aren't a coder.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, do you all have any other advice or any wealth of knowledge you would like to impart?
I'd like to share. I actually started off my college career at a community college, and I don't think I regret any part of my career path. And I actually didn't know what design or UX was when I was there, and I wish that was something that I did know about, because it would have appealed to me much earlier, and I don't know where I'd be if I had known those things.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so many options, so many opportunities out there, and they're ever evolving. Like you said, Kristen, things that were, you know, there'll be something else 10 years from now that we don't know about. So
Yeah.
just trying to keep up with it all.
Kudos to you, Robin and Rhonda. I mean, this is so fantastic to just, when I saw it, I was like, wow, go on, Reynolds, having a little, I was so proud of us.
Well, you know, it's like Rhonda was saying, you know, when I think of design, I think from the artistic perspective. And so this allows us to gain information and knowledge about it as well. So we can, when we talk with our students, we can share with them other opportunities that they might not have thought about. So as we all are advising students in various programs, whether they want to transfer or not, we're just trying to keep up with it all. And we appreciate you all taking your time, you all the experts. I know you all have busy lives, busy schedules, to come in and share your knowledge and information about your field. We really appreciate you all taking the time to do that and forming a partnership with you all, because, you know, we have a core group of students this semester, but they're constantly changing. You know, next semester students will transfer. Every semester we have a new group of students. So I hope this is something that we can continue to do, you know, maybe at least once a year as we get new students enrolling, you know.
Yeah, it's an exciting field, and you don't have to, I mean,